Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle brought to you by FanDuel, and we cover every single Big Ten team here at the Big Ten Huddle. We appreciate you being here with us as we have another Big Jeff's Insights episode to bring to you. Jeff is going to go through the strength of schedule and the out of conference so far for the Big Ten teams, take a look at who has faced the most difficult opponents, but we won't use ESPN. Don't worry, not going to use those guys, going to use PFF and some more non-biased stuff out there that I think will help picture this a little bit better. Also going to get to Jeff's 5 games that he is looking at this week that could be huge for the Big Ten, his picks, his predictions. We'll have it all for you. But first, before we do that, Jeff, we got to get the injury update, man. You were telling me you got an injury update for everybody. This could be one of the biggest injury updates of the season.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but some of you might know my son Junior hasn't played this year. He's played one down since he's been in high school due to various issues. Broke his collarbone in the summer season. Supposed to be out 3 to 4 months, and he's going to have a doctor's appointment tomorrow where hopefully we'll get the clearance. We had discussed a month ago that the homecoming game, which is a week from Friday, would be his first game back, and then tomorrow is just the final appointment just to confirm that. They'll take a final x-ray, and assuming everything looks good, he'll be able to go full contact next week, JR. So we are super excited. He is jacked up. Hopefully I'm not jinxing things by talking about this beforehand, but injury is part of football, right? A lot of these games we're going to talk about later, injuries going to play a factor in them for sure. So that's the downside of football, no doubt about it.
But like you said, that's the sport. That's what you sign up for. Stuff like that's going to happen, but you still play the game. You still love the game. We got Philip here. It says IOL, I there for you, Philip. Appreciate you being here. We're going to get Jeff to break the tie. I picked Illinois. Zach picked Indiana. Let's see who Jeff picks here to break the tie. Max Ellis also says, good evening, everyone. Philip, how important is Xavier Scott? So if you need Philip's answer, you get there in the chat, but we'll address that certainly when we get to Illinois, Indiana. I have some thoughts on it. Max says, finger crossed for you, Jeff. Appreciate that, Max. Very kind. Billy says, howdy all. Howdy, Billy. Appreciate you being here. All right, we got a lot to get to here, Jeff. Let's go ahead and get into it. We have a number of things to get to, but first, as we always do, let's review your I'm sorry, not review. Did you have those?
Yeah, so we're actually going to first we're going to do
after that. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's all right. So the open, I always want to have like a different topic than just diving into all the games. So we're going to really look at the non-conference schedule and compare them. And after looking at all the data, I decided, you know what, let's do a Big Ten versus SEC, kind of like a scorecard after 3 weeks of the non-conference season. So that's what we're going to do first. Then we're going to review my picks from last week. And then we'll go through the 5 games I'm choosing. And there's only 5 Big Ten games. So we're going through all 5 Big Ten games, right? In conference games. So I thought it's pretty interesting. This is kind of a summation of a lot of the data that I analyzed. We're going to look at a table here in a second that breaks out each Big Ten team and looks at their best wins and things like that. But really what you're seeing here on the left-hand side kind of compares the Big Ten to the SEC across different dimensions. So the first thing is versus the AP top 25. The Big Ten, unfortunately, is only 1-4, with that sole win, of course, being week 1 when Ohio State beat Texas 14-7. The SEC is 4-2 against top 25 teams. So, they've done better than the Big Ten in that dimension. Just one column over, how are we doing versus Power 4 teams? So that includes the top 25. Big Ten is 5-6 against Power 4 teams in the non-conference. So, Northwestern played Oregon. I'm not counting Oregon's win over Northwestern as a Power 4 win. We're talking just non-conference for both conferences. You can see the SEC 10-3 against Power 4. So have played, a couple more games and definitely have a much better record than the Big Ten. When you're talking about other FBS teams, so these are all, non-Power 4, if you will, games. The Big Ten 17-2. That's pretty good, but unfortunately, the SEC is undefeated, 13-0 against all non-Power 4 FBS teams. And then as far as FCS, Big Ten is 16-0 against those teams, as we should be. Not surprisingly, the SEC is 12-0. And then just total non-conference, 41-8 record for the Big Ten, and the SEC is 35-3. Now, as we know, the SEC is going to have a bunch of teams they're going to play later in the year. It's the real, a lot of powder puff games. They're the ones we like to complain about that they have before a lot of their big, marquee matchups, et cetera. So the non-conference slate is not over. The Big Ten has two opportunities to really change this dynamic. One this week, Purdue at Notre Dame, and then USC and at Notre Dame, which is later on in the year. So, that's a chance. Notre Dame probably going to remain in the top 25. We really need some better wins, in the top 25 to kind of tout that. Just a couple of things is ultimately, we talk a lot about FCS teams. By the end of the year, the Big Ten will have played 16 FCS teams in the non-conference. So 16 for the Big Ten, 21 for the SEC. And that's where they're going to have more because they've got, only 8 conference games, JR, and of course those 4 non-conference for sure. So, Jared, before I get your comments, head-to-head's another thing to look at. So that's on the right-hand side. Talked about Ohio State, Texas. It was unfortunate that Alabama really pretty much dominated Wisconsin 38-14. We know how Michigan lost to Oklahoma, but that was a much tougher game with a, freshman quarterback on the road. If they would have let Bryce Underwood loose a little bit, maybe, who knows, maybe it would have been a little different dynamic. So the SEC is up on us, 2-1 against us, or we're 1-2 against the SEC. The other thing, JR, just the average per team strength of schedule per Pro Football Focus. And now this strength of schedule does include the in-conference games because it was almost impossible for me to extract those. The Big Ten strength of schedule on average per team is 78, and there's 136, I believe, FBS teams. So we're 78th as far as, toughest strength of schedule per PFF. The SEC is 40th. So better than us, but that does factor in. I think they had a couple more in-conference games. What's cool, though, the strength of schedule for the rest of the year, and a lot of this does have to do with because we're going to have 9 conference games. The Big Ten, on average, has the 17th toughest strength of schedule by team. The SEC, 26th. So things get much tougher, right? I mean, this is kind of a lament of mine, though, JR. It's just, I just wish the Big Ten would schedule better. I do think the SEC moving to 9 games and forcing one of the non-conference games to be against a Power 4 team is great for the Big Ten because it's going to force all of our teams to improve their schedules, which that's important for impressing the committee. But I really believe, JR, the only way to get better is to play teams as good or if not better than you, and it's going to make us more battle tested. I know we get battle tested throughout the season in the Big Ten, but I really worry we're going to look at Penn State's, strength of schedule based on their 3 non-conference opponents. I'm wondering how battle tested they're going to be for this big game next week against Oregon. But JR, I know it might be the first time JR has really been able to look at this closely, but comments from you on this, JR?
I totally agree with you about the scheduling stuff. I've harped on it. I made a tweet about it today. There are still 4 teams in the Big Ten that do not have a Power 4 team scheduled in the out of conference for next season. That's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Now, those teams, I'm not going to dog on those teams as much as I am going to dog on the Big Ten and Tony Petitti. Listen, you wanted the SEC to do this, right? You should have had a plan in place so that way, as soon as the SEC made their decision, you were able to counter right away, make your decision, and say, look, the SEC is going to play 9 conference games and a Power 4 opponent. We're going to have all of our teams do the same thing. You have Purdue, who is playing 2 Power Four teams next season, and you have four teams and that's not even good for Purdue, right? Purdue's just at a point right now where they're just trying to make a bowl, and they've got multiple Power Four teams on their out of conference when you have teams in the Big Ten that don't have any. You need to require, and like I said, I'm going more at Tony Petitti in the Big Ten here more than I am those actual teams. You need to require the teams to go out and schedule those difficult out of conference games. I'm not going to knock Oregon for not playing a ranked team because you scheduled a Power Four team, and guess what? A few years ago, Oklahoma State was ranked. You had no idea that Oklahoma State wasn't going to be good this season.
Or
When
Oregon
Alabama
State.
or
Oregon State be that bad as well.
Yeah, but they're not a Power Four team, so they can be good, but they're not.
I mean, they were just 2 years ago.
They
though.
were, but not now. So,
Yeah.
but you couldn't rely on that, and I commend Oregon. Oregon could have said, yeah, well, we're playing Oregon State, so it's fine. Washington did that, but again, Washington should. I guess I shouldn't say shouldn't because it's this year before it ever happened. But next year, Washington shouldn't be allowed to do that. They still have one more out of conference game Washington needs to schedule. So we'll see if they schedule a Power Four team. But overall, the Big Ten needs to do a better job of having marquee Big Ten games in week 2 onward. And they also need to do a better job of scheduling difficult out of conference games for the rest of the conference that are big games that get attention from the national media and everything, and also challenge them for later on in the season.
Absolutely. And I worry for the Big Ten, the committee, a tiebreaker is often going to be, hey, similar record in conference. Who have they played in the non-conference, right? And we're going to lose that comparison very often. That's why This is so important. And like I said, making you more battle tested. It doesn't mean you have to go out. If I'll give it Indiana, you don't have to go out and schedule Notre Dame. They had the perfect team in Virginia. Virginia is not very good, but they're should be a solid team. They're a perfect team to be playing, and they dropped them. It's pretty frustrating. But anyway, I think we made our point there, JR, and we're definitely in sync on that. The other thing, just to be clear too, even though head-to-head, not great versus the SEC looking, very clearly still, though, the Big Ten and the SEC are 1 and 2. So I'm not even comparing us to others and everything, because right now it's just the battle between the Big Ten and the SEC. The ACC and the Big 12 are clearly second tier, I guess is the way I would say. It's not like they're terrible, but they're not at the same level.
They are, but like I said, after UCLA lost to New Mexico, we can only say the Big Ten is the second best conference for so long while we have bottom dwellers in the conference. Listen, I don't normally go at Big Ten teams, but Northwestern, UCLA, get stuff right. You can't be out here losing to group of 5 teams. I know Tulane is a good group of 5 team, but you can't be out here losing to group of 5 teams. It's unacceptable. And honestly, if we ever get to the point where teams are being kicked out of the conference, the first teams I'm going to look at, I don't care if you've been in the Big Ten for years upon years upon years. I want teams that are going to compete and are going to put the effort in and the financials in to do that. And right now, unfortunately, it's not UCLA and it's not Northwestern. Now, I'm not going to blame the UCLA players because a lot of that is administrative issues, but UCLA can't just come in and join the conference and then, just completely screw everything up. Like, get your money together, get your act together, and go out there and produce an acceptable football team.
Yeah, and just the final thing on this, and you raised a good point there. One of the reasons why the SEC has done so well versus Big Ten, they're 2 traditional bottom feeders. Well, Vanderbilt won. Vanderbilt has contributed greatly to these figures for the SEC based on how they're playing. And then Mississippi State was supposed to be last in the SEC this year. What did they do? Go out and have Arizona State come in and they upset them. So, right now, I don't know who the bottom feeder might be Florida, for crying out loud, in the SEC, which it's kind of a scary proposition. But anyway, that's good stuff, Jared. Let's look at the next thing, which
let's get to one comment really fast. J-Man makes a good comment, so I want to bring it up. And also, he's watching on X. We appreciate our X listeners. Please do repost the show if you're listening on X. We appreciate that. Says scheduling is a mess. We're scheduling team 90 years out. I wish there was a neutral entity to schedule non-con games. You're exactly right, J-Man. Sorry. This is what we need to happen. Unfortunately, it looks like the only hope of that happening is the government at this point. So, you know, this is where college athletics is going to. So, all right, I apologize. Let's get to the next one here, Jeff. Take it away.
Yeah, so this is just taking this a little bit further. Just kind of interesting to see all the Big Ten teams and what their strength of schedule was in order. So the fourth column over is the Pro Football Focus strength of schedule through 3 games. Not surprisingly, UCLA, the only team who hasn't won a game, they've had the 11th toughest in the nation strength of schedule. Northwestern comes second because they played Tulane, who's doing really well. Michigan's third with 18th toughest strength of schedule. And then Wisconsin is 37th and Ohio State 38th. Everyone else is, 59 and above. And in fact, I did a stat here, JR. 9 teams in the conference have a strength of schedule of 90 or worse. And there's only 136 teams in FCS football. So half of our teams have a 90 or worse strength of schedule. That's pathetic. I mean, we're supposed to be the big bad Big Ten, but we're not acting like it there. The other thing that's interesting about this is my 6 column over, I have what the best non-conference win is based on ESPN's SP Plus rating for that team. Who has, what's your team's best win? So, for example, Minnesota's best win is over Buffalo, who has an SP Plus ranking of 89. Ohio State beat Texas, who at one time was number 1 in the AP poll. Well, now their SP Plus ranking is 14 only, quote only. So you could see here, many teams, their best win is against a team that has over 100 SP Plus ranking. So it's kind of similar, JR. 9 of the 18 Big Ten teams, their best win is against a team that has an SP Plus ranking of 100 or worse, or the best win was against an FCS team, which doesn't even get an SP Plus ranking. So this kind of shows the state of how bad that non-conference schedule is, getting team by team. And I'm going to post, in addition to my art, by the way, I have a full article on all my 5 picks that we're going to be talking about later and summarizing what I did last week. I'm also going to post, JR, a separate article with these tables. I'll do that by tomorrow as well. So anyone who's listening to this on a podcast can see those tables if you're not able to see it here in person. And then just the final thing that's interesting about this table, JR, Pro Football Focus strength of schedule remaining. So the remaining 9 games, how tough are those schedules? I think that's very interesting. You see number 2 on here, not surprisingly, Wisconsin. And we've talked about that all along. Many feel that they had the toughest the toughest overall schedule. And according to Pro Football Focus, that's about right on. Number 1, JR, it's not Florida. It actually is Arkansas. Part of the reason is Florida already played LSU, which was really tough, and Arkansas has got their toughest schedule to come yet, including Notre Dame, by the way. Another team with a real tough schedule is Rutgers, 4th toughest in the nation, remaining strength of schedule. And Iowa is 8th with remaining strength of schedule. That's why this Rutgers at Iowa at Rutgers game this week, JR, is so huge, because they're just going to have to battle to get that 6-7 wins to make a bowl or a decent bowl. They need to win these 50-50 games. So this is a really big one for them, obviously. And then I'm not going to go through all the others other than to say who are the 2 or 3 worst remaining strength of schedule. Actually, the worst is Nebraska, number 38, which is not bad overall, but that's worse than the Big Ten as far as remaining strength of schedule. Second worst remaining strength of schedule is Michigan, with the 28th best strength of schedule. And interestingly enough, JR, Nebraska, obviously Michigan's playing at Nebraska. And it really speaks to whoever wins that game based on their remaining schedule really have a pretty damn good chance of getting in the playoff picture. I know Michigan lost at Oklahoma, but that's actually going to win them kind of points in a way, right? Or they're not going to be penalized too much punitively because, and I agree with that actually. So that game is huge for them. They're right there. All the other Big Ten teams shake out kind of in between those two. But I thought this is a pretty interesting look at, game by game and team by team of who their best win was and what their remaining strength of schedule looks like. Any thoughts on this, JR?
It's interesting. I, you know me, I'm not huge into the strength of schedule metric. They don't take into account coaches. They don't take into account if you have like back-to-back road games, stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that goes into schedule that I think you have to consider. Also, if you get a trap game right before something and then injuries when those come up. So I do think it's interesting, and I do think it's something that probably is generally correct, but for the most part, I like to look at the stuff kind of like you did in the first one with just the Power Four teams that are scheduled more than anything in the non-con. And sometimes when you schedule in the well, you don't even pick the schedule in the conference. Sometimes you get easier conference schedules, and sometimes you don't. Everybody harps on Indiana's conference schedule last year. People thought Indiana had a hard conference schedule. I remember doing the show talking about we didn't talk to Indiana very much leading up to last season, but when we did, it was like, yeah, this sucks for them. They're going to have to face Washington, who's in the national championship, Michigan, who won the national championship, Ohio State, who, like on and on and on. And then found out Ohio State was the only good team. I mean, there were obviously other good teams, but they were the only kind of tier one team that they ended up facing. And so, it's one of those things where you really probably never really know the strength of schedule for a team until the end of the year. And then even by then, there's so much that gets talked about, like, oh, well, we've improved in this area, or oh, did you see us against this team? That it's like, for me, for the most part, as long as you're trying to put respectable opponents on your schedule in the non-con, that's what I care most about. If Oklahoma State sucks, it is what it is. Sucks for your strength of schedule rating. But I'm not going to worry too much about it. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and I look at strength schedule as kind of directional. It's kind of like recruiting rankings. If you're in the top 10, that's really good. But does it really matter whether you're 3 or 7 in the top 10 in recruiting, right? I mean, is it that much of a difference? But if you're 40th in recruiting, that's not good. So I look at same as strength of schedule, really. And to your point, often we really don't find out later how good that win or loss was, right? Like Illinois beat Duke on the road. Really still to be determined. I know Duke lost to Tulane, but Tulane's good. So we don't know how good Duke is. So you often don't find out till later. But very interesting look at it. All right, let's go, JR, if we want next, unless there's comments, to reviewing my picks from last week. Next table.
Billy just said kind of something I was saying here, so we'll reiterate Billy. He says strength of schedule is not an exact metric, still subjective written into it. I do appreciate that Jeff used the PFF. There's obviously subjectivity to that, but that's one that I don't think PFS has a bias when they're doing their grading and stuff like that. And if they do have a bias, it doesn't seem to be as much. So if we're going to look at one, I think PFF is a strong one to look at. I do appreciate that, but you are correct, Billy. There's subjectivity, and some people say, oh, it's data. There's no subjectivity. You've never worked with data before. If you don't think there's any subjectivity that can happen with it. So.
And the committee's going to use various metrics, right? So they all matter. No one could say it doesn't matter, but they don't use any one metric either because they know they're imperfect. So good points. Right. Directional in nature, though, in general. So if we go to table 3 here, just my picks of the week. I'm kind of bitter about it, JR. I was looking great. UCLA lost to New Mexico. I had New Mexico in the points to start the night. Then Wisconsin was losing to Bama, and it was clear I was going to win that one. Meanwhile, Oregon was blowing out Northwestern up 34-0 early in the fourth quarter. Man, I was looking at 3-0, maybe 4-1 week. And then Northwestern scores 2 late touchdowns, really the last 5 minutes of the game. I lose that one. And then in the other 2 games, which I'm going to review in a second, I lost those as 2. So I went only 2-3 last week in week 3. I'm 6-9 on the year for 40%. One thing I could say, I usually don't start picking games until you get into the Big Ten season, because only then do you really kind of know the teams. So earlier in the season, it is harder to know what you're betting on. But really, if I had to choose these games again, I probably would have went with the same picks, to be honest, maybe with the exception of Minnesota, because I didn't know about an injury. So just what I got right. Of course, the New Mexico, I went back and forth on that, but obviously them losing that game caused Deshaun Foster to lose his job, which was unfortunate. Bama laying 21.5 to Wisconsin. I just thought it was a bad matchup. I was surprised how poor Wisconsin's secondary played. Not that I thought that they were going to match up really well, but I thought they would do better than they did. And obviously they badly missed Billy Edwards Jr. I think he's second to last in Big Ten rated as far as Big Ten quarterback starters. So they really need him back. Other things I got wrong, of course, lost Oregon, but I still think they're the least talked about great team in college football. That's going to change next week. Everyone's going to be talking about them next week, leading up to the big game at Penn State. USC laying 21.5 points to Purdue. I felt great about that until they had the lightning delay. And I'm like, I'm cooked here. A team that's already traveled 3 time zones, then they have to wait 2 or 3 hours for the game to start. It's basically going to take the air out of the USC's balloons. I give credit to them, though, for playing still really well. And I must say, Purdue is better than I thought. So they covered. I would have loved to seen it if they would have kicked off when they were supposed to and seen the result. It might have been a different result. And then finally, JR, Minnesota laying 2.5 points at Cal. When in the hell did the running back Darius Taylor, when they said he was going to be out, I found out, I guess, Saturday afternoon. If I would have known that ahead of time, I wouldn't have taken Minnesota. I would have taken Cal. It's only a 2.5 point spread. So really would love to see the college game be a little bit more like the NFL if you're really going to be betting real money, which I wasn't, but my reputation's on the line. JR, when did you get word of that injury?
Yeah, I don't think I got it till Saturday either. So
yeah.
PJ Fleck does a really good job of hiding his injuries from the opponents and unfortunately the fans as well.
Yeah, so sad story. Did a lot of complaining there, 1, 2, and 3, but Eric actually felt good about the picks overall. So let's get into the 5 for this week. All right, so we're going to cover all 5 of the Big Ten games: Iowa versus Rutgers, Wisconsin versus Maryland, Michigan versus Nebraska, Illinois at Indiana, Michigan State at USC. We're covering all 5. So this first one here, tomorrow night, I guess at this time, it'll be about halftime, JR. Iowa giving 2.5 points to Rutgers, a 45.5 over under. The all-time Big Ten winningest coach visiting Piscataway, New Jersey. It was good to see Iowa, Mark Gronowski, who struggled the first 2 games. Good to see against UMass. He actually had a pretty good statistical night, 16-24, 179 yards, 2 TDs. Unfortunately, UMass in the S&P Plus rankings is dead last. So they were a bad team. So while that's great, Gronowski did that, you better do that against a team like UMass. That's badly needed, though. The Iowa defense, they're ranked 2nd in the Big Ten. They're only giving up 178 yards per game, and they're 3rd to last in total offense. So this is kind of like the typical Iowa team, JR. Better on defense than we even thought, I think, based on who they lost, although it's early. But worse than we were hoping for sure, by being, 3rd to last in total offense in the Big Ten. Not a recipe for a team who would like to someday be making the playoffs. And we mentioned they have the 8th toughest remaining schedule, so this is a huge game for them. Meanwhile, Rutgers 3-0, remaining schedule really tough, 2nd toughest in the Big Ten. So this is just a huge game for both teams in many ways. So why Iowa can cover the 2.5? I have 3 reasons. It's very unlikely Rutgers is going to stop this Iowa rushing attack. The Iowa offensive line is number 1 rated by Pro Football Focus. So they're going to look to run the ball, and this is going to allow Iowa to mitigate their weakness, of course, having the worst passing game in the Big Ten. And Rutgers is going to help them there. They're third to last in the Big Ten, giving up 149 yards per game rushing. So third to last rushing defense in the Big Ten. They're 90th in the nation. And then even worse, the competition hasn't been that great for Rutgers. They're giving up 5.6 yards per carry. That's 128th in the nation. So Rutgers sucks at run defense. Iowa, I'm not saying they're great. Iowa, in fact, despite having that great offensive line, their run game is, let's see, I was looking for their average yards per rush. It wasn't spectacular. It was in the 4 range. Oh, yeah, 4.9 yards per carry. And that's good.
That's Iowa?
That's Iowa, 4.9. They did play Iowa State, but then they played an FCS team, and then, who they just played in UMass. So not awesome, but pretty good. But either way, Iowa should be able to run the ball, and you know what the game plan is going to be. Control the clock and run it. So second reason, just Gronowski, hopefully they can get more out of their passing game, because they might need to, because Rutgers has got a pretty good offense. So hopefully they found something. I'm not even hoping that Iowa's going to have an average, but hopefully they just have a capable passing game to supplement that running game. And then the third reason, just the Iowa defense, really good, second in the Big Ten, third in the nation in total defense, coached by the great Phil Parker. They're only giving up 10 points per game, and the most they gave up was that 16 points in that 3-point loss to Iowa State. So really, really salty defense that's very capable of holding down other teams' offenses. So why take the points with Rutgers? 3 reasons. Just love how Ethan Kaliakmanis is playing. Definitely way better quarterback than Mark Gronowski. And Gronowski really struggled on that road game at Iowa State. So that's what Rutgers is hoping here, that Gronowski struggles on the road, which should be a real good environment in New Jersey that night. But Kaliakmanis, 73% of his passes completed this year. Basically, his 3-year average leading up to this year is about 54%. So this is huge for him. He's also averaging 273 yards passing, 7 TDs, 0 interceptions. That's led to Rutgers being +4. And then Kaliakmanis, according to PFF, has the best Big Ten passing grade at 92. And then he's got big weapons to throw to. He's got 3 receivers with over 200 yards receiving: KJ Duff, Ian Strong, and DT Sheffield. Unfortunately, getting back to that injury conversation, Ian Strong out for the year, I believe. Is he out for the year or just out? No, he's out for this game, right?
Yeah, just this game,
just out for this game. Sorry. So injuries will affect that. But, Rutgers is pretty deep here. So I do believe that they can still throw the ball well. Number 2, if Rutgers' offensive line can hold up against the Iowa front 4, this is going to be the key to the game. Has to give Kaliakmanis time against that stout Iowa front 4 in particular. Because Rutgers' passing offense, first in the Big Ten rank, their pass blocking grade is ranked 3rd, JR. So according to Pro Football Focus, 3rd best pass blocking grade for Rutgers. So that gives them a chance because that defensive front 5 is really good. 10th in the Big Ten in pass coverage only, but the Hawkeyes are first in the Big Ten in pass rush grade at 88.9. So that's going to be really the key to the game here. Rutgers' offensive line holding up, giving Kaliakmanis time to throw to those really strong weapons that they have, and going against that, famed Phil Parker zone pass defense coverage. So, Iowa, the other thing is Iowa much easier to beat on the road. So I just kind of was interesting. I looked up the the season last year, 6-3 in the Big Ten for Iowa last year. They were 4-0 at home, but only 1-3 on the road last year for Iowa. So they really struggled. They lost to Minnesota, Michigan State, and UCLA. So we're not talking about juggernauts that Iowa was losing to last year. So those are the things that speak to why Rutgers could win. So it's really, is Iowa's rushing attack going to be more effective in possessing the ball than Rutgers' strong passing attack to all the weapons they have? Red zone execution is going to be key here for both teams for sure. I don't like betting this game. Really, it's, there's some strong reasons for both teams here. I'm going to go with Iowa to win and cover in a tight game, though. To me, Kirk Ferentz and his staff, the reason he's the Big Ten leader in wins is they've won games like this, kind of like those 50-50 games, JR. This is what they've thrived in. Now, last year, they didn't do that great in those. And I like Schiano's staff, but I'm just relying on Ferentz. And so I'm going to call Iowa 24, Rutgers 21. So just barely covering, right? The spread was 2.5. So 24-21. I wouldn't bet this game, though. Not really high confident of it, but I'm going with the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, this one on FanDuel is -2.5 in favor of Iowa. The over/under is set at 48.5. Death Star coming in here helping us out. It says, I don't believe they've said Ian Strong is out yet. I double checked where I looked that up at, and the reporter was speculating that he believed that Ian Strong would be out. So I misread that. I apologize. Yep. But his reasoning was short week, that kind of stuff. That's what led him to believe that. But that was just an opinion. That wasn't an actual report. So thank you, Death Star, for keeping us honest there. Yeah, I think this game is going to be a big line of scrimmage game. Rutgers has a very good pass blocking offensive line, and they've done a good job in run blocking too. It's not been as good as their pass blocking according to PFF, but they've done a good job with their pass blocking as well. And don't look now, but Raymond is a very good running back this season. He's been underrated a little bit because it's Rutgers and not a lot of people think of them, but this offense has some firepower, and that's why the over-under in this one on FanDuel has been going up. It was set at 44.5, I believe, when it opened, then at 45.5. Now it's jumped up to 48.5. This is one. The over/under is set exactly the same as Indiana and Illinois right now, which is kind of crazy to think that those two games would have the same over/under to think about it, but we'll see. I picked it to go over right away when it was 45.5, but I don't know if I'd pick it to be over anymore in this one. So, all right, those are my thoughts, Jeff. Anything else before we move on to the next one?
No, I'm just glad he pointed out about that injury. They thought he was likely to be out, but he's definitely not. It sounds like it's going to be one of those game time decisions.
For sure. And before we move on, Steely Matt did share the stream on X, and we always appreciate you doing that, Steely Matt. He says, good show, JR, Jeff. Appreciate you being here, Steely Matt, sharing the stream. We always appreciate when people do that. Thank you very much. All right, let's get to the Maryland-Wisconsin game here, Jeff. This one is Wisconsin favored by 10.5 on FanDuel. Maryland, or against Maryland. It's home for Wisconsin. The over-under in this one set at 44.5. I got to be honest, after the Wisconsin performance with their secondary against Alabama, I might think this one might have some more points than set at 44.5. So if I'm going to have one of my bets this week to look at, it might be the over here in the 44.5. But of course, Wisconsin, I'm not sure that offense is going to fare super well against this Maryland defense, which is young. It's young, but it's got some good pass rushers. It's got some good safety play so far this season. We'll see how they do going to Camp Randall. But I won't do the preview. Jeff, it's your preview.
That's a good setup. That's a good setup. And game between two coaches, Luke Fickell and Mike Locksley, kind of went into the year kind of on the hot seat, right? Or candidates where if things go south, who knows? The other thing interesting, Billy Edwards Jr., of course, his former team is Maryland. He would love to play. He's day-to-day. I don't think that's changed. He's day-to-day.
They're going to keep that one. I don't think they're going to keep that one under wraps as long as they can.
Yep. He's day-to-day, in case you're wondering. So that's a big deal, of course. The bad loss to Wisconsin last week. This is a must win for Wisconsin. I mean, you heard me talking earlier, second toughest remaining schedule in the nation. After this game, 5 of their remaining 8 Big Ten games are against top 25 AP teams. So they have their work cut out for them. This is a must win for them. Maryland feeling pretty good, though, 3-0 under Mike Locksley. Very excited about the true freshman 4-star quarterback Malik Washington. Right now, he looks like the real deal, averaging 250 yards passing a game, 6 touchdowns, and only 1 interception for a freshman, a true freshman. That is impressive. And then he also is the 5th rated Big Ten quarterback as far as passer rating, according to Pro Football Focus. So really strong starts for him, which is great for Maryland. So let's get into a reason why Wisconsin could cover. I only came up with one big one. I'm just doing that to save time there, not that I couldn't come up with others, but really it's all about this Wisconsin defense. Clearly is the strength of the team. I know they struggled versus Alabama, but Alabama has NFL receivers. Not many Big Ten teams have those. So Maryland is very one-dimensional. We're going to cover some stats. They're ranking last in the Big Ten in rushing, and that's where maybe Wisconsin might have an elite defense. I'll share some stats there. So really, the Badgers stop the run, then look to confuse the young quarterback on the road, and then hope to contain the Terps passing game and really frustrate that young quarterback. That is the recipe for Wisconsin to win this game and cover the 10.5 points. So that run defense that's been elite, they're just giving up 1.9 yards per carry on the season. That includes playing Alabama. I know Alabama hasn't been great on the run, but 1.9 yards per carry is impressive no matter who you've played. That's second in the nation as far as the yards per carry statistic. Maryland has only rushed for 117 yards per game, and that's against weak competition. They're, as a team, averaging only 3.5 yards per rush, and their leading rusher is only averaging 3.8 yards per carry. So they just don't run the ball well at all. And if they were doing that against their competition, it's going to be ugly against Wisconsin. So really it comes down to, Malik Washington there. So Maryland is an impressive 7th in the Big Ten in passing, 266 yards per game. Wisconsin's defense in pass defense is only 16th in the Big Ten. So that is going to be the problem for Wisconsin, if you will. They're going to have to play much better in the secondary there. So 3 reasons why to take Maryland. Maryland's defense seems to be best against the run, and that is a good fit for the Badgers because they've struggled to throw the ball. They would love to establish the run, and maybe Maryland can make it real difficult for Wisconsin to score points. So Maryland's 10th in the Big Ten in run defense, but the Big Ten rush defense stats are really impressive. Maryland's only giving up 103 yards per game, and that's 10th in the Big Ten. Part of the thing, JR, is the Big Ten's played so many terrible teams that the stats are, you have to be really impressive, right, to be high on Big Ten defensive stats because we played such terrible teams, basically. So that's pretty impressive, though, I think. The other thing is Wisconsin's offensive line. If I've listened to their podcast, God, they're struggling so bad. They have a couple major holes in the line. They've had a center that's been injured quite a bit. I don't know if he's going to be at full strength, but really the Badger fans are super worried about it. And who would think we'd be talking about, Wisconsin's offensive line is maybe the biggest weakness on the team. So really, Maryland with a chance to shut down that running game, forcing Danny O'Neal, who's the second worst rated PFF passer in the Big Ten, force him to beat you. That sounds like a pretty good formula to me there. So that's the first reason. Wisconsin's just going to struggle to score points, I believe. Really, they're going to want to get some turnovers to get some short fields. They're 16th in the Big Ten in average scoring. That's Wisconsin, 24 points a game. And that includes playing, Miami of Ohio and an FCS team in Middle Tennessee State. It's kind of embarrassing. First half struggles is the culprit, JR. Badgers have scored 3 points, 14 points, and 0. So 17 points in the first half across 3 games. So they have to get it out to a good start. And then the other thing, Maryland has actually played pretty well on the road in the Big Ten the past 2 years under Loxley. 3-6 overall in the last 2 years. That included 3 losses to Indiana, Oregon, and Penn State. So 3 playoff teams are among that 3-6 record. So he's actually done pretty well on the road in the Big Ten. And Luke Fickell, on the other hand, JR, at home in the Big Ten, he's only 3-6. So the old, it's Wisconsin, man, you're going to struggle to win there. I'm not saying it's easy. It's still a tough environment, but it's not what it used to be. Wisconsin is not playing with the confidence that they used to have. So, key to this game, Wisconsin's got to rattle and confuse the young QB. Hope he plays like a freshman. I'm calling for Wisconsin to win the game, JR. I think, with Maryland's confident enough to keep it close. But this is a must win. I do think they'll get the win. I'm calling it Wisconsin 24, Maryland 17. So Wisconsin wins the game, but Maryland covers the 10.5. Thoughts on this?
Yeah, so you got them on the under there. Yeah.
And I'm not really worried about – I'm really more betting against that spread. Like, you won't see me in this because I think people I find it more interesting not to go over the under. So if you wanted to convince me it's a higher scoring game, I could say yes. I'd probably say Wisconsin still wins by 7.
Yeah, the over-unders are always more fun to me to try and predict, how much is going to happen and stuff like that. So that's typically what I go for a little bit more. But yeah, we'll see how it goes in this one. All right, I want to keep us moving here so that way we can get through all 5 of your games. All right, next one is Michigan, Nebraska. Michigan favored in this one by 2.5. Over under is set at 47.5. Talk of the town is Bryce Underwood. He's been unleashed. He's got the green light, Jeff. He can do whatever he wants. We'll see if Bryce Underwood can affect the FanDuel spread and the over under here that I just mentioned, but we'll see how it goes. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
So that over-under is up 3 from just, I think, a day ago, or maybe even this morning, JR. So here's interesting. Can Nebraska snap a 27-game losing streak to top 25 teams? Do you believe that, JR? 27-game losing streak to top 25 teams. They back to 2016 against Oregon is the last time they had a top 25 win. We talked about the schedules for these two are easier, 2 of the easiest going forward. So really, whoever wins this game is a viable person to say they're playoff contenders, right? I mean, they're right in there for sure. And then you already talked about Bryce Underwood. Another thing to note, Sharon Moore is suspended again for this game, although maybe that's not such a bad thing with how Michigan blew the doors off of Central Michigan last week. Why Michigan can cover that 2.5? I have 3 reasons. Just a breakout game for Bryce Underwood last week. Maybe that upside for the Michigan offense will come earlier than we thought, and give him real confidence for this second road test. First road test against Oklahoma, he really struggled. 9 of 24, 142 yards, no TDs. So it was great to see him last week, 235 yards passing, rushed for 114 yards. He accounted for 3 TDs. It was just really impressive against Central Michigan. That's a MAC school that's decent, right? And they're going to need him to be real well because Michigan's offensive line continues to struggle. It's a must that Underwood plays very well to win, and he's capable of it. So that's the first reason.
2 offensive linemen out for Michigan, most likely. Giovanni El-Hadi for sure out, and then Brady Norton is suspected to be out as well. So a blow to the Michigan offensive line there. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And I just say number 2 for Michigan cover, despite their struggles with the offensive line, they've got a dude running the football, and they have capability to control the clock if that line can just block better. Justice Haynes, of course, the transfer from Alabama, has been really impressive. Michigan actually ranks 4th in the Big Ten in yards per game rushing, believe it or not. 243 yards per game, 6.1 yards per rush. So maybe that offensive line might run block better. Obviously, they must run block better than pass block for sure. But Haynes is averaging 7.9 yards per carry, 129 rushing yards per game. They want to run the ball, keep and use that old formula that Michigan has always used. The other thing is Nebraska ranks just 15th in the Big Ten in rushing defense. So that's a weak spot for Nebraska, something to take advantage of. Now, the stats can be deceiving. The good stat for Nebraska's rushing is they're only giving up 4 yards per carry. So that does tell me, JR, other teams are running a lot on them, but really not as efficient against them. The third reason, though, Dylan Raiola is playing really well. He's not nearly as mobile as Oklahoma's John Mateer. So his running ability really gave Michigan fits. Of the 408 yards Oklahoma had, Mateer accounted for 84% of them. He had 270 yards passing and 74 yards rushing. As good as Raiola is playing, they don't want him running all over the place, right? He's mobile and he can do that, but that's really not a key part of their game plan. So Nebraska really doesn't want to rely on that. Why take the points for Nebraska? 3 reasons. That growth of the Raiola in year 2, I was chirping about that. Expected it. You've seen it. And the year 2 under Dana Holgorsen as well, the offensive coordinator. Guess who leads the Big Ten in pass offense? You'd think it's USC maybe, but no, it's the Huskers. They're averaging 366 passing yards per game, number 1 in the Big Ten, 5th in the nation. But it's kind of crazy. They were 65th in the nation last year, and 2 years ago they were 126. Now, they're not going to stay that high, but that just really speaks to the improvement he's made, and includes playing against a good Cincinnati team in those stats, JR. So really impressive. Total offense for Nebraska, real good. So, and then Raiola, 8 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. I'm impressed by that because last year he had 13 touchdowns only and 11 interceptions. So 8 and 0, just huge improvement. And Michigan's pass defense is solid, but not spectacular. They're 10th in the Big Ten, giving up 182 yards per game, right? Part of that is the pass rush, I think, JR, is not what it was. So pass defenders can only defend their person so long before someone's getting open. So Michigan really misses Mason Graham and those others up front. The second reason, they can confuse Underwood up front with different looks and keep him in the pocket and contain him. I think the Husker defensive game plan should be what Ohio State did against Texas and Arch Manning. Don't have those defensive ends fly up the field. Have them contain, keep Underwood in the pocket, and make him make throws that a big-time quarterback needs to make. I think that's the formula, and I do believe Nebraska's smart enough to utilize something like that. Also, change up the secondary looks. Make them think it's zone, and all of a sudden it's man-to-man, and vice versa. And then finally, the third thing is, I just think it's a different feel under Matt Rule. He knows that this was a losing kind of culture and thought process and mindset. He's changed that and really built a tough mindset. That's why in the Akron game at halftime, they were up by 33, and he went off on the team because he knows they need to play like with that chip on their shoulder, no matter what the score. That's what winning teams do. And so he's trying to build that toughness. So what's my call on this? I had Wisconsin and Nebraska winning this game in the preseason because I felt Underwood would still be learning and getting his feet under them. I think that's going to be a big deal here. Raucous environment. He's still real young, struggling offensive line, couple injuries you mentioned, JR. I like Nebraska in this game to cover, and not only that, win the game outright. Nebraska 27, Michigan 20, Nebraska to cover and win outright.
Wow, that's a full sweep. Me, you, and Zach all picking Nebraska in this game, and Philip continuing it. He's got Nebraska 23-17. Max says Michigan, Nebraska is getting a ton of hype compared to where their teams are in the standings right now. I think it's due to brand name, but who knows? Well, yeah, it's definitely brand name, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of people giving Indiana, Illinois credit this season, thankfully. But yeah, brand name and that kind of stuff, and also where the two programs are at right now, right? Michigan is kind of falling away from when they won their national championship. They won 8 games last year. Are they going to be above that? They're going to be under that. And then you've got Nebraska, who, they have the hype to possibly get to 8 games. And so two teams kind of just in that area. I mean, heck, I say possibly get to 8 games. They could possibly make the playoffs, for all we know. I mean, that schedule, the rest of the season looks pretty favorable as well. Let's see. Dank has his prediction. He says Raiola is a field general. Underwood needs games under his belt, taking the experienced QB in this game. That's a big thing for me as well. The experienced QB
well.
at home. I think that matters a lot. So, all right,
Jeff. I think just the other reason it's good, big hype. People are starved for Big Ten games. I mean, we talked about how bad the non-conference season was. I mean, you got Indiana, Illinois. I mean, last week we had it was nothing, right? As far as our in-conference games, they were kind of two duds, really. So,
yeah. You can't put. I mean, I'm sorry to these two programs. I'm not trying to disparage you, but unfortunately, it's where your programs are at right now. You cannot put Northwestern and Purdue as the two opening Big Ten opponents for bigger teams in the conference. You just can't do that. You need to put Oregon, Penn State. You need to put some better teams. Michigan and Nebraska. That's a perfect one to kind of intro the season. Indiana, Illinois would have been perfect, but no, you cannot have Oregon, Northwestern, and Purdue and USC again. No disrespect to those teams, but it just does not get the national attention that a Big Ten game warrants. So, all right, let's do the next one here, Jeff. We have Illinois heading to Indiana. Indiana started off as 4.5-point favorites. It's since then jumped to 6.5, and the over/under started, I believe it was at 52.5, and now it's gone down to 48.5. Kind of going with what I think about this game. I think this game will be lower scoring. You have some possibilities, some explosive plays in this one, but I think the slow start of Illinois and the possibility, obviously, it hasn't happened the past couple weeks, but we'll see what happens against a better team. The possibility of red zone struggles for Indiana matters as well, as they did struggle against Old Dominion the first week of the season, and that was the most difficult team that Indiana did face. So a lot of question marks in this one, Jeff. The spread and over/under brought to you by FanDuel, and I'm curious to see your thoughts and where you stand, because Zach and I are split on this one, and we'll have you break the split here.
Yeah, really excited. This game is finally here. Been talking about a lot in the offseason, the importance of this game. We thought these teams would be both top 25, and they are probably even better ranked than I thought. And the winner of this game really puts them in a good position to potentially make the playoffs. For Illinois, prove their number 9 ranking. For Indiana, I'm an Indiana grad. It's to really this isn't the only game that will do it, but this is the first big proof point game for Indiana to show last year was not a fluke. We really did belong in the playoffs. The other thing to say, first time 2 AP top 20 teams have met since 1987. That year, I was a freshman at Indiana, and I went to a game of number 15 Indiana against number 20 Michigan. Indiana won 14-10. I was there. It was a sleet rainstorm. We stormed the field. And so I was there the last time 2 teams met in the top 20. Shows you how old I am, people, but also shows how bad Indiana football has been through the years. So obviously, such an important game for them. Illinois, first time in the top 10 since 1983. And they're looking to justify that. And then we talked about that reasonable schedule. They get past this, really sets them up well. The other thing is, JR, if Illinois and Indiana don't get these games, don't win this game, they have some games against tough teams like Ohio State. And, if they don't beat those top teams, they might not have a top 25 win to speak of. You could have a team that's 10-2. That's why this game is so important. I do believe both teams are going to end up as top 25 teams because they are top 25 teams. But if you don't win this game, if Indiana doesn't beat, who are they playing? I don't have the two. Oregon and Penn State, they might not have a top 25 win, right? And that makes it real hard for the committee because, the AP is going to look relatively similar by the end of the year to the committees. as everybody's top 25 is going to look similar. So that's why it's so big here. And so let's get into the reasons why Indiana can win. I have 3 reasons. And I felt this all along. Illinois, really well-coached team, clearly a top 25 team. I just don't think they're legit top 10 okay? I think Indiana is better than they are. Better in personnel overall. And last year, Illinois was very fortunate. I can't get over this. They were outgained on average last year. And I know that's not just the only stat, but if you look at average yards for rush given up and all these other stats, Illinois was not that impressive, which speaks to how well coached they were. ESPN's metric had them more as an 8-win team than a 10-win team based on statistics. And just because you return a bunch of starters, hello, Clemson, doesn't guarantee you're going to make this big leap up. Now they're playing well, but not all their position groups have been playing well, and I'll get to that in a minute. So if Illinois wins this, though, then all these things I've been saying, Illinois can tell Big Jeff to shove it, basically, and they're capable of that. I'm not giving any guarantee there. Number 2 reason why Indiana can cover, though, I really love the balance they have on offense. It's going to be really hard for Illinois to contain that. Indiana's 2nd in the Big Ten and 3rd in the nation in total offense, 4th in the Big Ten in passing offense, and 1st in the Big Ten in run offense. So they can do both pretty equally well. So if Illinois is trying to shut down one thing, Indiana's perfectly capable of, okay, we're just going to do this instead. That's a dangerous thing. They have 2 star receivers, Omar Cooper Jr., almost 300 yards receiving. Elijah Surratt, some think might be a first-day pick. They did lose. This was a big loss. Kaline Black had over 200 yards receiving. 200 yards rushing, excuse me. He is out for the year with a knee injury, so that's a big deal. But Indiana has some pretty good depth. And then Illinois, just 9th in the Big Ten in total defense, 13th in pass defense, 5th in rushing defense. Again, stats good, but not all that great. So Indiana's balance, I think, is going to be a problem. And then the Illini offensive line with 5 returning stars, they're not very good. They have a couple good players. J.C. Davis ranks well by PFF. Josh Geske rates well. But then after that, you got way down the line. They got some people that just aren't playing very well. A couple players that aren't even in the top 100 on PFF as far as Big Ten. We're talking just Big Ten offensive linemen. So I just don't think that offensive line is all that impressive. They struggled. They were average last year at best, and they're average this year at best. And Illinois leads the Big Ten in giving up 9 sacks this year. That's the most in the Big Ten. Indiana's got a good defensive line. Mikel Kamara, he's the real deal. Might be a day 1 pick as well. So really, that's a tough matchup for Illinois, and a big reason why I'm liking Indiana, if you can't tell. There are reasons to like Illinois too. Luke Altmaier, I must say, watching him, I've been really impressed. Playing better than any Big Ten quarterback, and has more big game experience than Mendoza as well. So I do like that. Mendoza playing at Cal, this is going to be the biggest game he's ever played in, and Altmaier's played in some bigger ones. 8th in PFF passer and everything. I don't think I need to go any more about Altmaier. Just a really good player. Defensive end, Gabe Yakis. I think I'm pronouncing that right. He's an NFL dude leading the conference in sacks. He could wreck the game himself. So Indiana's going to have to game plan. How do we contain that guy and make sure he doesn't ruin our game plan? He's going to come from the edge. He comes from outside the tackles. So Indiana's going to have to account for him. I'm assuming they're going to move him around. And then Bielema, if this is a tight rock fight, he thrives in that, right? He went 5-1 last year. Indiana is not used to being in close games. Only 1-0 last year in 1-score games. This comes back to the schedule, JR. I hate the fact that Indiana really hasn't been stressed in a game, because they might be stressed in this game, and who knows how this group is going to react to that. That's why you want to play a tougher non-conference game. So those are things that favor Illinois for sure. So my call, though, I just think Indiana's better. New phrase here. I'm calling this my Lock City pick of the week, and it's not because I don't think Illinois is good. They're legit. I just think that balance of Indiana, the struggles of the Illinois offensive line is going to be too much. I like Indiana to win 34-24. They win by 10. They cover, win by 10.
All right, you've broken the tie. You have spoken. This channel is officially picking Indiana, I suppose, against my pick, but that's okay. We'll see how it goes. Do what?
Don't you work for Illinois now?
You went to Indiana, so we've all got connections here. But yeah, this regardless, this is gonna be a great game. Neither team can afford turnovers, mistakes, anything, and both these teams are some of the best coached teams, not just in the Big Ten, but in the entire country. So sit down, get your popcorn ready for this one, because this is just gonna be a fantastic game, and one that I think we're gonna be talking about until the end of the season. So all right, let's get to the last one here. No biases in this one, unless you went to Michigan State and I don't know about it, Jeff. We've got Michigan State and USC facing off. Michigan State heads to Los Angeles. USC is 18.5-point favorites. Over under set at 54.5 in this one. Me and Zach picked this one. We felt pretty confident in USC, and much to some Michigan State fans that were not happy with us because they felt like they have a better chance. And I didn't mean to give off the interpretation that Michigan State doesn't have a chance. Just with this travel, the way USC's been looking, and I know there was some stuff in that Purdue game, but like you pointed out earlier in the episode, the travel combined with the thunderstorm warning, I mean, everything that was going on in that one, USC just continues to look like not just a top 25 team, but to me, a top 15 team in the nation. I know they've not really played anybody of super significance for sure that yet, but this just looks like a really, really good team, and one that I think in the Big Ten, people are going to have to start circling when they're on their schedule. So like I said, FanDuel has it set at 18.5 in favor of USC, 54.5 set as the over under. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so just to echo that, Michigan State, I mean, I'm impressed. They're 3-0, important win at home against Boston College in overtime, 42-40. They're on the come up, right? They're getting better and better. I've said my preseason, I felt they're a year away. I still think that, but it doesn't mean they're not good and they're not getting better, because they certainly are. I think USC is the most underrated team in the Big Ten, could be in the nation. They're not getting the respect from the media, which is interesting because usually the Blue Bloods get more respect. Vegas is like them all off season. I mean, Vegas has considered them like a 15th ranked team all along. So just 3 reasons why USC can cover that. It's a big point spread, but this might be one of those prolific offenses that Lincoln Riley has, right? That you kind of expect. They're leading the nation in total yardage, 604 yards per game, number 1 in scoring, 55 points. Yeah, it's against bad competition, but others have played really bad competition too, and they haven't put up those stats. And then Michigan's defense rates is 16th best in the Big Ten, only 338 yards per game, but given the competition, 330 yards. But I do think they're better than that. The overtime game against Boston College maybe added extra yardage, etc. But certainly it's not a great defense for Michigan State. So that's a tough matchup. Also, Michigan State's pass defense ranks last in the Big Ten, giving up 273 yards per game. USC's pass offense is second in the Big Ten and 6th in the nation. Jaden Maiava is playing unbelievable, 330 yards per game, 6 TDs, no interceptions. So he's taking care of the ball, JR. That was a problem in last year for him, 12.9 yards per attempt. So he's efficient too. They're not just dinking and dunking here. And they've got 2 NFL caliber wide receivers, Makai Lemon, over 300 yards receiving, Jacoby Lane, over almost 240 yards receiving. They also can run the ball, so they're balanced. 5th in the Big Ten in rushing, 7 yards per carry they're averaging as a team. Wayman Jordan's their leading rusher. He's averaging 7.3 yards per carry. That's a nasty, nasty offense that I just described there in 2 minutes. Second thing is that the impact of that travel, I mean, it's a double whammy here. Traveling 3 time zones for Michigan State and a 10 p.m. Eastern time start. That's sleepy time normally for these people. And
11
then
p.m. 11 p.m.
it's 11
Hey,
p.m. My
yeah,
bad.
you're really gonna stay up for this one, Jeff. Get your coffee, get your Mountain Dew.
The other thing is, I do think the motivation factor that USC is chomping at the bit, the coaches and the players, after a couple rough years, right, to really show the nation we're tired of being disrespect everything. The old chip on the shoulder thing. It's amazing to me how 18 to 20-year-olds how that can affect people. Why take the points from Michigan State? Two reasons. Aiden Chiles really improving at quarterback, extremely impressive. Significant upside on the offense if Chiles continues to play well. Maybe they can score enough points because it is a mediocre USC defense, right? I mean, Chiles, 6 TDs, only 1 interception, taking care of the ball. So ever since the middle of last year, the turnover issue has been gone. That was only a first half of last year phenomenon for him. But Michigan's offensive stats still overall are not that great. 13th overall in Big Ten offense, 13th in pass offense, only averaged 4.5 yards per rush. It's all kind of mediocre. And they're giving up the second most sacks in the Big Ten with 8. So USC's defense kind of in the middle, second to last in pass defense. So that's the opportunity there for Michigan State. If they can throw the ball well against USC, maybe they can score enough points to make this a game late. The other thing is, you talk about discipline. So I looked it up. I usually don't use penalties as a stat, JR, but USC is averaging 80 yards per game in penalties. Michigan State only 35. That's 45, 50 yards in hidden yards. Maybe that can make a difference, right? So that discipline issue. But I just think this is a tough matchup. My call is obviously going to USC on this one. Even against Youngstown State, they gave up 339 yards of offense for Michigan State. That's an FCS team. So I just have a hard time imagining at the Coliseum and a night game them holding back that team. So I'm calling this USC 42, Michigan State 21. USC wins the game and covers the 18.5.
We will see if that happens. So Max says, are we gonna have a 3 a.m. Big Ten Huddle live stream on Sunday to account for the game? You are. Yes, you are. You are going to have, whenever this game is over, I will come on, just like I did after the Minnesota Cal game, which I did so. But yeah, you'll get a late night live stream on this one. I want to put out my power rankings as quickly as possible, and honestly, it's one of the most popular videos that we put out on this channel. So I'm gonna stay up for it. I'm not gonna fall asleep during the game. If I do fall asleep, I'll set an alarm. Don't worry. But we'll make it work. So, all right, Jeff. Really, really appreciate the picks here. Good stuff. All your analysis, your stats, and everything else. Is there anything else you want to say about the Week 4 of Big Ten football before we get out of here?
Yeah, be sure to check out my articles on bigjeffsfootball.com. Like I said, I'm going to post the tables that we listed here. Follow me at bigjeffsftball on X. And thanks for listening in to all the content here. JR and Zach do a great job. I listen to all of them. Try not to be redundant to what they say, right? I think that's an important thing. But we're just excited. We're getting into the meat of the schedule now.
For sure, for sure. Always appreciate it, Jeff. And Dank, I'm glad you brought this up. And now analysts head spinning from Lagway and Manning, they haven't noticed Maiava and Raiola putting in work. Who was trying to tell you before the season started? Don't sleep on Raiola. They're getting all this love for Lagway, but don't sleep on Raiola. Hey, Jaden Maiava is better than some people think he is. Give him a chance for next year. He moved the ball really well. I'm not going to say I was right because there are other things I was not right about, but we won't bring those up. But I do think it's important to look at all of these different quarterbacks and not just go off of the Andy Staples and I'm not trying to dog those guys. They're just the first ones that came to my mind that go around out there with their top quarterback list. So anyway, we'll end it there. Jeff, thank you for coming on. Everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here live. If you are here live, we appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Come join us on Friday night after the Iowa Rutgers game live stream, covering that one, and then Sunday morning, which is really kind of Saturday night after the Michigan State-USC game. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.